Welcome back to Interview At, where we teach you how to use the Amazon leadership principles to land any job at any company. You know, one of the most valuable parts of the mock interview process is the feedback, right? The most challenging thing that people have when they go in to do an interview with any company is they either find out they didn't get the job or they get told, well, we can't tell you why, legal reasons, which is actually just a load of bollocks. But you don't get the feedback you need. And that's why these follow-up sessions that I provide with mock interviews is, so valuable to the customers who come through. By the way, if you want to sign up for your free mock interview, you can do so at interviewat.com. But in this specific instance, and it's rare, but it happens, sometimes I give real-time feedback at the end of an interview. And I was editing one of my videos and found this piece of feedback that I gave to a candidate and thought that I would share with you. And in fact, this is one of the easier fixes that you can add to your interview prep that will make you much more effective in how you deliver your content within the context of your interview to ensure that you're presenting in a much better way and are much more likely to get the job. So we're going to cut to that piece of feedback, and then I will circle back at the end with some summary tips. And
You're amazing.
Huh?
You're amazing.
Thank you. I'm going to blush now. I'm not sure what.
Oh my gosh, thank you very much.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
I don't know what to say. All right, because I want to leave you with something to think about. When is your next interview?
Oh wait, you said come back to.
Yeah, no, I'm coming back. That's what I'm doing right now. When is your next actual interview?
None scheduled currently.
Okay. And I think if I recall, you said you had interviewed with Amazon as part of this.
Yes, but that was over a year ago.
That's fine. That's helpful because I can see how I have many notes as to why you failed to clear the bar at Amazon. It's very clear things that are, I think, easy to work on.
Okay.
And more in how you're communicating and what you're communicating. And in this one specific instance, it was just so clear as day that I want to go back to it and say, okay, this is what you really need to be thinking about when you're doing these interviews. When I was asking about the metrics of success around the media influencers, and you would sign up with a firm and they gave you a platform, the level of detail was very high level. It was like, well, I had a software platform and they gave me reports. Okay, but what did it give you? Well, it gave me 5 key metrics, and then you just moved on. I literally wrote, name the metrics. Why are they important, right? So when you think about you as a leader, someone who's going to be asked to lead programs where millions of dollars are at stake, you've got all these impressive stats, but then what you communicate in the room is, in this conversation, it was so high level. There was no detail. It invites the following question.
Okay.
Who did the work? Right? And as an interviewer, I'm thinking she didn't do the work. She had an agency doing all the work, and she doesn't know the details. Right? That's my takeaway from the interview. And you don't want to leave the interview with that impression. And I'm saying that in terms of that's how I would have interpreted this set of facts.
Okay.
I have a sneaking suspicion that what this is you're just not used to having this depth kind of conversation with people that aren't in your business or aren't in your kind of managerial chain. And therefore you're either assuming a set of facts that the interviewer might know. And therefore you're just assuming that they're on the level with you. And in an interview, never assume that. Ever.
Okay.
Ever. Right?
Okay.
Always assume they know nothing about what you do. And use the opportunity to double click down and go deeper into the weeds as check-in points to say, well, we use 5 metrics and I'm happy to walk through them if you want, or we can just kind of, keep going. That's an opportunity for you to level set that A, you know the data and you've got the information and you're willing to talk about it, but B, it gives them the option of saying, nope, I got it. Let's keep going. Or yes, I'd like to talk more about that. Right.
Okay.
But if you don't do that, a lazy interviewer isn't going to ask you a follow-on question. And a lazy interviewer is going to go, well, all this was high level. There were no specifics. And it really sounds like there's a bunch of other people that were doing the work. And I'm not really sure what she did.
Okay.
And
not the case. Not the case. Okay. I'm failing. I said it's not the case, but I understand that's my problem that I didn't. Okay. Got it.
Again, it may be, it's one of those things where if you're not getting this feedback as part of the interview loop, but you're doing well in your organization, and Albertson, everyone's telling you you're doing great because there's so much more context around what you're doing that you're forgetting as part of the everyday engagement that you have with your leadership team, that when you step out of that bubble and then you have a conversation with someone who knows nothing about Albertsons, who knows nothing about in terms of how you run your processes, you're leaving out so much that I have a suspicion is there, but you're not communicating it because in your mind, it's so rooted in everything that you do. It's like, well, of course they know this, but they don't.
Okay.
And so you end up doing yourself a disservice, which is leaving out tons of detail for the purposes of what I think is you're trying to communicate in a way that you're saying up here, but really in these interviews, what you really want to establish is, I can do this and I can do it really well for you, but I'm going to walk you through and I'm going to teach you the things you don't know. And I can go into the weeds if you want, or we can bubble it up, but having that executive communication to be able to, go down, sideways, or up is critically important when you're in these interview loops, because you don't ever know if the person you're talking to is junior to you, peer to you, or above you, except by title. Right.
Okay.
And so in a lot of ways, you have that opportunity in these sessions to level set at every time and point of fact, get them to invest in you every time, because you give them the opportunity. It's kind of like a choose your own adventure book for them. They get to kind of help guide a little bit, and you're making their interview a little bit easier by saying, well, I can go into more details here. And they say, yeah, actually, that just saves them of thinking of another question.
Okay.
Right. And so you're helping them along and you're bringing them along in the process and sharing that you've got mastery and command over the material, instead of leaving it to chance that they actually know what you've done and how hard it is and all the different metrics that are important. If they don't, you get a software engineer, they walk out of the room, they're like, I don't know.
Yeah. Okay.
Disaster, right? For you. Does that make sense?
Makes perfect sense. This is fantastic feedback. Yes. That makes amazing sense. Yes. Yeah.
Okay. So it's interesting. I was editing that video. That one's probably, 16 months old at this point. So you can tell I'm working through my backlog. But I think the most important point here, without doubt, the most important point is metrics matter. And especially in the tech world, but any company that you're going to go work for, you want to show command of the material. You want to demonstrate your job in an interview is to demonstrate that you can do the job. That's your job. Do that. And you do that by communicating that you have command of the material and you have repeatable frameworks that demonstrate you can do what you did at your last job in your next job. And this specific candidate, the biggest challenge was they just stayed at such a high level that it didn't communicate to the interviewer that they actually did the work. It sounded like someone else was doing the work, which, look, never make any assumptions as to how much knowledge your interviewer has about you, your company, your industry, or your role. Because when you make those assumptions, you're going to leave a ton of content out. And as was the case here in talking to this candidate, it was clear that they were so used to communicating within their company that they made a lot of assumptions as to how much knowledge was already kind of there and common knowledge. And the reality is, if I'm meeting with this person and I'm on an interview loop, maybe I've seen their resume, maybe I've looked at their LinkedIn, but I have 45 minutes to an hour with them, and that's it. And I have to make my decision based on what is chosen to be shared with me as the interviewer. So when you make assumptions about as the interviewer, level of knowledge of what you've done, you might leave out really, really, really important content. So you never want to not provide the details and leave the interviewer wondering who did the work, right? You did the work. And even if you led a team and someone else did the work, you still want to demonstrate command in the material that you are aware of how to do this and how to replicate it versus, well, I hired some company and I paid them a lot of money and they did it and whatever, right? So never assume that the interviewer knows much about what you're doing. Overshare, get into the details, get into the weeds, get out of your bubble in how you're presenting internally. You're not talking to someone you work with, unless you're interviewing internally and you're trying to go within your company, you're trying to get a better job. But if you're interviewing with a new company for a new role, get out of the bubble mindset of I'm presenting to my boss, and instead think about it as I'm working with this person now. We've gone to lunch and we're having a conversation about cool things that I've done in my previous jobs that I want to impress them with, that lets them know I was a great hire. That's the mindset you need to have. That means you have to overshare to get into the details. And in this case, it was name the metrics and really get into the weeds, but not too far to the weeds. And you can do that by asking clarifying questions. It's freebies, right? And here's the unwritten secret of the clarifying questions. And this is, I cannot stress this enough. When you ask the clarifying question, you know the answer. You already know the answer, which means you're giving them the interviewer, you're giving them a freebie question that you know you're going to do well on because you already know the answer, instead of the more scary thing, being asked a question that you don't know the answer on, and then you're trying to make something up on the spot, and you're basically doing improv for an audience of one, which is just horrifying and terrible and scary and all the horrible, awful things. Don't do that. Ask the questions you know the answer to. You win the interview.